electric bill has become one of the quieter pressures inside the American household budget. It does not appear on a gas station sign. It does not sit on a grocery shelf with a higher sticker. It arrives once a month, often automatically, as another bill that has to be paid. Behind that bill, the power system is changing. Across the United States, electricity demand is rising again after years of mostly flat growth. The Energy Information Administration reported that U.S. power consumption reached a record in 2025 and projected that demand would rise again in 2026 and 2027. That matters because the grid was not built for sudden, massive new loads to appear all at once. One of the clearest sources of new pressure is the rapid growth of data centers. These are the facilities that support cloud computing, artificial intelligence, digital storage, search, streaming, and many of the systems that now run modern life. To most Americans, a data center is not part of daily experience. Its electricity demand may be. In Texas, regulators approved a new process in June 2026 for handling very large electricity users. The Public Utility Commission of Texas approved ERCOT's Batch Zero framework for large customers, requesting at least 75 megawatts of power. That scale is difficult to compare with a normal household. A home uses electricity in kilowatts. A large data center may require tens or hundreds of megawatts. ERCOT said it was tracking more than 438,000 megawatts of large load requests. Nearly 89% of those requests were from data centers. That does not mean every project will be built. It does mean the grid operator is facing a volume of requests large enough to require a new planning process. The underlying system is not just one company building one facility. It is the way electricity is planned, generated, transmitted, priced, and paid for. Before a large data center can connect to the grid, the system has to be studied. Grid operators have to determine whether enough power is available, whether new transmission is needed, and whether reliability can be maintained. Then comes the economic question. How are those costs handled? That is where the issue reaches ordinary customers. A data center may be built for large technology companies, cloud computing, or artificial intelligence. But the grid that serves it is often the same grid that serves homes, apartments, stores, schools, and small businesses. If the system needs more capacity, new transmission, or additional reliability reserves, the question becomes direct. Who pays? In some regions, the pressure is already visible. PJM Interconnection, the largest grid operator in the United States, has seen sharp increases in capacity prices. Reuters reported that PJM capacity prices reached $333.44 per megawatt day, an increase of about 1,000% over 2 years. Capacity prices are not the same as a household electric bill, but they are part of the system that helps ensure electricity is available when demand rises. When those costs increase, they can flow into bills paid by households and businesses. PJM expected one auction to affect utility bills by 1.5% to 5% starting in June 2026. Reuters also reported that some areas in PJM saw utility bill increases above 20% starting in summer 2025. For households already managing higher groceries, rent, insurance, and debt payments, even a smaller utility increase can matter. An electric bill does not arrive in isolation. It lands inside a budget that may already be under pressure. Food may cost more. Housing may take a larger share of income. Insurance may be rising. Transportation may be more expensive. When electricity becomes more costly, it becomes part of a wider household affordability problem. Data centers are not the only reason power bills rise. Fuel costs, weather, transmission spending, utility regulation, and local infrastructure needs can all affect monthly bills. But the verified data shows that data center demand is now large enough for grid operators and regulators to respond directly. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission ordered 6 regional grid operators under its jurisdiction to justify or reform rules for connecting large loads. Texas is not under that same FERC jurisdiction, but Texas regulators separately approved ERCOT's Batch Zero process. The issue is no longer limited to one local utility. It has become a broader grid planning problem. Data centers also have a specific demand profile. The Energy Information Administration has described server load as effectively flat across all hours of the day. That means data centers can add continuous demand, not just demand during a few peak hours. For the grid, steady demand can have advantages. But when many large users seek connection at the same time, the system has to be ready. That requires planning. Generation does not appear instantly. Transmission lines are not built overnight. Regulators do not approve cost recovery in a day. Those delays help explain why grid operators are changing how they study and manage large load requests. In Texas, ERCOT's Batch Zero process groups qualified large load projects into a single study. The purpose is to assess future electricity needs, allocate grid capacity, and identify transmission upgrades. ERCOT expects to classify Batch Zero applicants in August 2026 and publish a final transmission plan in fall 2027. The process is still unfinished. The pressure has been identified. The planning has begun. The final cost, the specific projects, and the household-level impact remain uncertain. For ordinary Americans, that uncertainty is the practical concern. The electric grid is no longer responding only to population growth, weather, and normal business expansion. It is now responding to a new wave of large, power-intensive facilities tied to the digital economy. That economy may feel invisible. Its infrastructure is physical. It requires land. It requires cooling. It requires transmission. And it requires electricity. For a homeowner, the question may become whether local customers help pay for grid investment linked to new large load demand. For a renter, the pressure may be less direct, but still present through monthly utility bills, building operating costs, or the broader cost of living. For a small business, electricity is unavoidable. Restaurants, grocery stores, warehouses, repair shops, and local offices all depend on power. When utility costs rise, businesses have to absorb those costs, reduce other spending, or pass some of the pressure along. That is how a grid issue can become a household and local business issue. This is not a story about whether technology is good or bad. It is a story about cost allocation. Data centers support services that Americans use every day. But the power system still has to answer basic economic questions. How much new demand is coming? Where will the power come from? How quickly can the grid expand? And how much of the cost will reach regular customers? Regulators are focused on reliability and affordability. Grid operators are focused on whether the system can handle large new loads. Data center developers want faster access to power. Consumer advocates worry that residential customers may end up subsidizing growth they did not request. Each viewpoint reflects a different part of the same system. For the household receiving the bill, the issue is simpler. The bill rises, or it does not. The monthly budget absorbs the increase, or it does not. And when several costs rise at the same time, even a moderate utility increase can be meaningful. This is why data center power demand matters beyond the technology industry. It connects a national technology boom to a local household expense. It turns artificial intelligence from a digital headline into a physical demand on the grid. It raises a question that may become more important as electricity demand continues to grow. Not whether America should use more technology, but whether the power system can expand quickly, fairly, and affordably enough for the people who already depend on it. The verified facts show a system under new pressure. U.S. electricity demand reached a record in 2025. EIA projected higher demand in 2026 and 2027. ERCOT is tracking hundreds of thousands of megawatts in large load requests, most of them from data centers. PJM has already seen capacity prices rise sharply. FERC and Texas regulators are changing large load connection processes. What remains uncertain is how much of this pressure will show up in specific household bills, in specific regions, and over what timeline. That is the part Americans will feel most directly, not in a policy filing, not in a grid planning meeting, but in the monthly bill that arrives at the kitchen table.